I'm a K-I-N-G, baby, I'm all you need. In the off-white Rari, baby, we run the streets. I'm a K-I-N-G, Westside royalty. I'm a K-I-N-G, baby, that's all you need. I'm a K-I-N-G, baby, I'm all you need.
All right, so here we go. Welcome back, everybody. This is Steven Bassito. You're my podcast, Get It. And today my guest is Kevin Boyle. And Kevin is a goalie in the NHL. He was with the Anaheim Ducks. And I actually know him because I had the blessing of getting to train him for a period of time as he prepared for what was last season. And of course, it was a interesting season given the whole COVID thing and what he went through. Now he's moving on with a new team, but I'll let him tell everybody about that. But today we're really walking through more of what that journey is like to become a pro athlete. And there's so many people that have all this misinformation. And of course, as a coach and a club owner and a person who gets players into college and sometimes overseas, or if lucky enough, maybe that small percentage to the NBA. But getting the blessing to work with so many athletes as a strength coach in so many different realms, and having seen a lot of my players make it to the professional ranks and knowing how hard that really is, I'm going to let Kevin explain how hard that really is in his journey in making it to the NHL. And so thank you so much for joining us, Kevin. And, really just want to hear, when did you start playing hockey and you just fell in love with it and wanted to obviously make it far? And then what was that journey really like, and how hard was it for you to make it to the NHL?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Appreciate you keeping me company during all this. But yeah, it started pretty much my whole journey. I have an older brother who played hockey. He's 5 years older than I am. And he started when he was really young, and he was a goalie also. So he started when he was like 5, 6 years old. And ever since I was probably 1.5, 2 years old, I always wanted to be like him. Like he's been my hero my whole life. And I've written papers about him. Like he's just an incredible human being. And I always wanted to be like him. So I grew up watching him and just like he'd stick me like in the net when I was 2 years old. I could barely walk. I was crawling around, and he'd just like stick me in the net when he was playing street hockey with his friends. And I'd just be like crawling around, and they'd be shooting balls at me. That's where it got started. And then, that it progressed to, he started playing roller hockey. So I wanted to play roller hockey, and my dad ended up being the commissioner for our local rec roller hockey league. And so I got into doing that. I started playing roller hockey, and I was like, at that age, I could skate, and no one could skate at all pretty much. So my dad, you needed someone who could skate to be a goalie. So my dad was like, no, just hop in. And my brother was a goalie too. So I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. And it kind of just progressed from there. Playing roller hockey, I went into learning to skate on ice hockey because, once again, my brother was doing it. And I never really played any other position in ice hockey. Once I learned to skate, my dad had me in pads playing ever since I was 7, 8 years old. And I kind of fell in love with it. Like I said, it's a thing that I grew up watching my hero do. And I really just wanted to emulate that. And I was lucky enough that it progressed into what I have now. And it's kind of crazy to look back on.
So where did you grow up?
New Jersey. Yeah. Manalapan I was in, which New Jersey is not that big of a hockey area. It's getting bigger now, but it really, my dad didn't play hockey. My mom knew nothing about it. So they never really knew anything about it until my brother got into it. But we were lucky enough to find some really good people to help us out. One of them, who ended up marrying my sister, he was my goalie coach growing up, ended up marrying my sister, and he's now my brother-in-law, which is pretty cool. But he's helped me a lot. And like I said, we've been really fortunate enough to have a lot of people who have helped us out and shown us the way to kind of make a living out of this.
So did you play hockey for a high school team, or was it just club where you're from?
So I grew up, I played travel all the way up until I was a sophomore in high school. And my high school never had hockey until I think they just incorporated it my junior year. But they were never really any good or anything like that. So my sophomore year, I ended up playing, I made the jump to, it's called junior hockey, which is like the step below college. So I started that at a young age. And then once, I actually have a funny story about like high school, because I just graduated my normal public high school. And they ended up getting hockey when I think I was a junior. And at that point I was already committed to go play Division I hockey at a place. And I was in an accounting class one time, and we had a sub, and the sub was the assistant coach for the hockey team. And he was calling out all the names and everything like that. And he comes to me, he's like, "Kevin Boyle." And I just go, "Yeah, that's me. I'm here." And he goes, "Are you the kid who's committed to go D1?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's me." And he goes, "Let me talk to you outside after this." So he brings me outside the class, and he's like, "What do I got to do to get you on the team?" And I looked at him and I was like, "I'm not going to play on your team." I already had a thing going. I was already committed somewhere. So I did not play any high school. Just went and played juniors in New Jersey until I graduated. And then I took a year off from school, and I went and played in Canada, in British Columbia, which was pretty awesome, before going to college.
And where'd you go to college?
I started at UMass Amherst, and then after 2 years, I transferred to UMass Lowell and played 3 years there.
And when did you know that you wanted to play in the NHL?
It's something that I always have, even like growing up. It's something that you dream of. I never really thought it would emulate or turn into what it has. But you never really do. But it's always been a dream of mine to make it to the highest level. And I just got really fortunate that it happened.
So how hard was it to go through the junior level there and get selected to even go to a D1 school?
Committing to the D1 school, it kind of happened naturally. I wasn't even playing at the highest level or anything like that. I kind of just got lucky where I went to a tournament, and this, UMass Amherst saw me play, and it literally happened like that. It was like a week later, I was on a visit, and then the week after that, they were like, "Hey, you want to come?" I think I was 15 years old at that point, so college was still 3 years away. I wasn't even really thinking about it, and they were like, "Hey, you want to come full ride?" Like, no money at all. And my mom looked at me, like, they said that I was on the phone, and my mom was right next to me. And they said that. My mom looked at me and was like, "Yeah." And I called them back the next day, and it happened. So that all happened pretty quickly. But playing juniors in Canada for that 1 year, I think that was huge for me, because it got me out of like living at home, and it made me realize what it was like to actually take care of myself, and it made me grow up a lot. So that was a huge step in my development.
And what was a normal day like that for you?
Out in Canada, I took a college class just to get ahead in some college credits. So I would wake up, I think my class was at like 8 or 9 o'clock. I'd go to class about an hour, and then we'd practice at 1 o'clock and be home by 3, 4 o'clock, and off to do whatever the heck we wanted to do as 19-year-olds.
Okay. And when you got to college, what was your college schedule like between, obviously practices, workouts, team meetings, film, all the things that go on? I don't know if you guys had to meet with a nutritionist, and then how you balanced your class load.
Yeah, I was actually talking to someone the other week, and I was thinking about how even like now, I think hockey was more dominant in my life in college than it is being a professional athlete now. I think like in college, you're pretty much your whole life is surrounded by hockey. You wake up and every day is pretty much the same. You wake up, you go to class for a certain amount of time, and then you're at the rink for 4 or 5 hours, come home, do homework, go to sleep, wake up, do it all over again. So it pretty much dominates your life in college, but I think that's good. It makes you grow up. It makes you realize that you really need to spend your time really wisely and not waste all those moments that you do have to be able to kind of unwind and get yourself back to where you need to be.
Because I remember when I played in college, I would talk, I would talk to people. I'm like, dude, it was no joke, man. Like, it's a job, and you have to love what you do, right? If you don't love it, you're not going to do it. And that's why a lot of high school kids do drop out from playing college sports, because they don't understand you're with that top, 2% of players.
Yeah.
And that's through the JC, through the D1 level. Like, you're playing the best of the best, the guys that wanted it the most. And like for us, we had to be up at 4 a.m. Our first practice was at 5 a.m. and we had to be in the locker room by 4:45 or we were late. And so we get to the locker room at 4:45 in the morning. You're quickly, you get to your locker, you get on your stuff, you get ready to go. And then we had 2.5 hour workouts or conditioning practices. It just depended on the day. We'd run back to the locker room, shower, change, grab breakfast. And on our way, as we were eating breakfast, we'd get to our classes, and classes would go from, like 8 to 1. And then we had study hall from 2 to 3. And then at 3 o'clock to most of the time, 7 o'clock, we were committed to our coach and practice. So we had all of our, we had the next 4 hours with film, whatever else we had to do in the practice, which practice was usually 3 hours. Then we'd run back to our locker room, shower, grab our stuff, and then we'd be home by 7:38. You eat, and then you go right back to bed because up at 4 in the morning.
Yeah. It's crazy. That's why when I hear about all these arguments about players getting paid in college and stuff like that, I'm like, this honestly, it is a job for them. There's like, they dedicate pretty much their whole life to that. And like that, I pretty much had the same schedule. I'd wake up, I'd go to class. I had classes starting at 8 a.m., be in class from 8 to 12, go home, eat lunch, be eating lunch in the car on the way to the rink. And we'd be in the rink from 1:30 until 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, go home, eat dinner, do your homework, and then you're doing the same thing over again. And that's 6 days a week. You only get the one day you have off is Sunday, and you're so exhausted from the practice that week and the games that you played on the weekend that you're really not doing anything on Sundays. So it's hard. It's definitely a grind, but it's all worth it. And you need to, it forces you to really crack down on what makes you be the athlete that you are, and realize how you need to go about your day to ensure that you're at the highest level that you can be every day.
Yeah, I agree. It was definitely a lot of fun, but it was definitely, like you said, it forces you to grow up. And and I agree, with the argument of whether college athletes should be paid. I mean, like, not all athletes are fully scholarshiped. You only get a certain amount, but more importantly, like, a lot of athletes, like, I had to work. I grew up low income, so I actually had a job, and I just had to make my job work around my schedule. So I had some money to put gas in my car, or to like pay for a meal. People don't understand that. And for college athletes, you do have, and people look to like those select D1 kids, but they're not all like that. And so, you are working full time, and if you have no means to make money and pay for anything, it can be challenging. And a lot of athletes do work. And so being able to get paid for the sheer volume of hours you're putting into it. I mean, the typical athlete, let's just say you're only putting in 5 hours a day, and we're not including travel or any of that stuff. We're just saying that you put in 5 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's still 30 hours a week. That's a job.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. What was it like getting picked to play in the NFL? Were you signed as a free agent, or were you drafted?
I was signed as a free agent out of college. It was crazy. It's crazy how it happened. It was my senior year, we were in the NCAA tournament playing, and in the game to go to like the Final Four, Frozen Four, it was called for hockey. We were playing in that game to go to the Frozen Four, and we ended up losing. We got smacked around the ice. And obviously, so like my college career was over. I didn't know what was going to happen after that. Probably 30 seconds after the game is done, I'm getting like all my stuff off, just like hanging out in the locker room with the guys, enjoying their time. And our coach comes in and pulls me out, and he goes, "Hey, like, I know like this is tough and everything, but tomorrow, like when we get home back to Lowell, tomorrow night, you're going out to dinner with the Anaheim Ducks." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I literally, my college career literally just ended. I didn't have any time to process it. So the next day I go out to dinner with them. And they're like, "Yeah, we want to bring you in." And it probably happened, I think it was like 3 or 4 days after that I was signed. And then probably another 2 days after that, I was on a flight out to California to finish their season with them. And I didn't get to go to my college graduation. I didn't get to finish my year off or anything like that, but it all happens quickly. But it was really cool I had never been to California before, and I got to go to San Diego too. So like going out there and being able to play hockey and see what the life was like as a professional athlete was pretty cool.
So how many years did you play for the Ducks?
4 years. Yeah, I was with them for 4 years. I think I played like 5 games or so with the Ducks, but most of the time I was in San Diego with their minor league team. Okay. Yeah, it was a good 4 years. A lot to thank them for.
Give me your 3 or 2 top high moments, and then give me your couple bottom low moments.
I mean, my top moment, you gotta say the first start I had in the NHL, and it ended up being I got the win and I got a shutout in my first game, which was, I mean, it's even hard to describe nowadays, but that was definitely the top. Second, I don't know. I mean, it's tough to pick a second. There's so many different things that you could say. Like I was an all-star one year, but I don't know. I more gravitate towards like the relationship aspect of the people that I've met in hockey or in California. And kind of like, because we became so close to the community out there with the fan base and everything that it was tough to leave them this year as a free agent and sign with another team. It was tough, knowing that we're not going to go back. So I think that was probably my second favorite thing, is just the relationships that I've made in those 4 years are ones that I'll cherish forever. As far as the lows, there's a good amount of them. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's been some hardships. Like the day before my first NHL game, me and my wife found out that we were having a miscarriage. And that was the day, but like literally the night before I found out I was going to play my first start ever in the NHL before. So like that was pretty tough to deal with. But I was lucky that I had something to get my mind off of that also. So the two things kind of went hand in hand there. But I mean, other than that, there hasn't really been too many big hardships, I would say. There's always like battles with, you're not getting playing time, stuff like that. But those things always tend to work themselves out as long as you're making sure you're working hard and taking care of yourself. So,
well, one thing I'll say, since I know you, and I know most of my viewers probably don't, but you're a really humble guy, and you just have a very like quiet, calm demeanor at all times.
Yeah.
It's one thing I really respect about you too, is especially as a professional athlete, because you don't hear about the humble guys because they're humble and they're quiet. You just hear about the obnoxious guys that are loud, and I have a few of them that I work with, and they're nice guys and everything, and I don't talk negatively about anybody. I don't think that anybody deserves it, but you are just such a you come in, you do your thing, you're so polite, and if somebody's like encroached on your space. You just kind of move out of the way, you know, there's no ego or anything with you. And it was really fun to get to spend the time that I spent working with you and getting to know you. But not to bring up tough stuff, but I know that you are a dad now.
Yeah.
So it eases some of the pain. How many miscarriages did you guys have?
Just one. We just had that one. But like, I've always been a big believer in, you know, everything happens for a reason, no matter what it is. And, you know, at some time, like sometimes things happen and you might not know at that time what the reason is for it happening. But say a year, 2 years, 10 years from now, you're going to find out like what it was. And that's why like that happened. And that was the hardest thing that we've ever had to go through. Knowing that like, you're not going to get to meet this child that you were so excited to meet. But with that happening, it brought us our little girl that we have now. And if that didn't happen, we probably wouldn't have our little girl right now. So that's what we mean. Like what I mean, where everything happens for a reason. And now we see that and we couldn't be happier. So
I agree with you. And I'm actually going to be talking more about miscarriage later. But as I told you, you know, before we did this, my wife and I have gone through 4 miscarriages with losing twin boys in our last one and finding out that we wouldn't be able to get pregnant. And then now we're about to give birth to our second girl, which is exciting.
Yeah.
But, you know, to what you said about the distraction, you know, our very first miscarriage was a late first trimester, and it was on my birthday, which was kind of, you know, the miscarriage on the birthday was more of an impact because everybody was texting me and calling me to tell me happy birthday.
yeah.
In the parking lot, I'm not really an emotional person. And I remember at one point I just, you know, I needed to go for a walk. I just was in the parking lot of we were at Kaiser and Irvine, and I kind of like, there was a spot where I could kind of like hide myself from visibility from all these different places, and just cried for a while. It was tough, man. And then having to try and like, you know, tell our parents, tell her work, tell my business partners or business managers for whatever businesses, you know, I'm going to be taking the week off, having to explain to them why, and then just having to relive that every day for so long, you know, was so challenging. And, you know, people don't know it. It really takes a toll, you know, and now that we're about to welcome our newest addition, it's easier to talk about now, but it wasn't until recently. Even up until 3 months ago, I still cry, man. And I'm, like I said, I'm not an emotional person. It's really, really hard. And, you know, I've had a few close friends who've now gone through it, and I just tell them all, like, you're going to feel how you're going to feel, man. You're going to feel how you're going to feel. Don't feel ashamed. I think there's a part too where you know, I don't know how you guys dealt with it, but for us, like, you know, we didn't really want to talk about it with people. We just kind of wanted to, like, because you don't know how, for us anyways, we didn't know how to process how we felt about it right away or for quite some time. And then having more miscarriages when you're still grieving the first one. And I mean, it's such a complex thing to discuss, but it is hard. And especially if you don't have, you know, I didn't give myself any distractions. I took a week off to focus on Tara, and I ended up, I don't play video games. My wife bought me a PS4 when we first got married, and I think I only have like 3 or 4 games for it. And it's pretty much the same 3 or 4 games I've had. Like I'll buy one once in a while if it's a Marvel game because I'm a huge Marvel fan. But I just don't play it that much. And Spider-Man come out, the new Spider-Man game. And I had bought it a few days before that happened. I think I pretty much just burned a whole week playing that video game in between doctor's appointments and stuff because I didn't want to feel, right? I wanted to escape because the pain I felt, there wasn't a solution for, right? Like physical pain goes away. And there's usually like, oh, I was snowboarding and I hurt myself, or I was surfing, or I was, training, doing my MMA stuff, whatever it is, right? I was doing something, there's a physical response. You accept, oh, I got hurt because of this, and you just move
Yeah.
on with it, right? And it doesn't really affect you, but that emotional trauma is there's no escape, man. And there's no, like you said, yes, someday we'll understand why we went through what we went through.
Mm-hmm.
But it will take time, and it is hard. And so, that's to hear your story of going through what may have been the worst day of your life into one of the highlights of your life. How that's such a blessing. And then also, like, my question would be, how did you deal with that emotionally? Because you're coming off of this loss, and then you're going into what was a phenomenal game for yourself, your first start. How did you get back to the normality of your life too?
I don't think my life got back to normal it took a while. And as you like you said, it's okay to grieve about stuff like that. Like stuff like that, I wouldn't wish on anybody, like no one. And it's okay to go through that pain and feel that pain. But you also have to look for the positives in everything. And you have to look at the right side of everything. As hard as it is, you have to look for that little light at the end of the tunnel to get you through it. And like I said, I was lucky enough to have that distraction where that got my mind off of it. And it got my mind, even if it was it was probably 2.5 hours. It got my mind off of it for 2.5 hours. It got my wife's mind off of it for 2.5 hours. And that was really cool for both of us to go through something so hard, but have something so amazing happen at the same time. It also gave us that feeling of, you know what, this is going to be okay. Like, we're going to get through this. We're going to battle through it, and everything, life will go on, and life will be okay at the end of it.
Did you talk to your teammates about it before you played?
I didn't. So that was another thing where, so I was obviously up in Anaheim. I was in the NHL, and so when you're up there, you're pretty much, your lives are more under a magnifying glass where more stuff gets out. And we had literally just found out the day before. So it was fresh for us. And we told our family, direct family, and that was it. Like, didn't tell cousins or anyone like that. So we didn't want it getting out and affecting the way that people were looking at everything like that. We wanted to separate our home life from my professional life.
Right.
It's tough, but I think that's also important, is to know how to balance both of them. So
when did you guys end up telling people, like, within your organization?
It's probably, well, I told like management, not right away, but it was probably a couple days after the start, because we had to go through like doctor appointments and stuff like that. And we were going on the road. So, and obviously I wasn't this happy, chipper person every single day. So they kind of had to know. And originally, so the day that I found out that we were having a miscarriage, I was at practice, and Kendall, my wife, I get out of practice, and I have probably like 5 missed calls from her. And then she's like, have to go to the emergency room. So I book it out, and they were supposed to tell me whether I was playing the next day, that like at practice, but I had to leave, like book it out of the rink so I can get to the hospital. So they ended up calling me, and I had to tell like a couple of the coaches what happened that day. But then I told management like a couple days afterwards, just so they knew what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And they were extremely supportive of everything, which that was a huge help. Also, as a guy, like a young guy who had never played in the NHL before, to come up and have this happen, and then have them be so supportive, that was really cool for us.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's tough, man. That's a tough spot to be in, but I'm glad it's worked out for you, obviously, and you get to celebrate having a little baby girl. You get to be in the girl dad gang. I have a shirt my wife got me. She got me too, and the first one was it says girl dad.
Yeah.
I wear that around, so I was wearing it a couple days ago. And I was in Orange County for a basketball tournament, and I'd met a friend for lunch, and I was walking in my car, and a couple of different guys in different parts of the parking lot saw, and they both had little girls. And I heard both of them turn to their wives like, "Hey, check out that guy's shirt. It says girl dad." And then I'm pretty sure they both said that they wanted it, but I didn't hear that last little part. I was just sliding in my car.
Oh yeah. I got a shirt that says girl dad. I think I was wearing it yesterday.
Dude, I tell people, you can't articulate what it's like to be a girl dad.
Yeah.
Like if you want kids, right? If you don't want kids, I'm sure that, you feel a different way, but I wanted kids and still want to have more. And it really is so incredible how a little girl can change your heart.
Oh yeah.
Some people, like I think the last time I cried, I was 11 years old. I didn't cry again until, it must have been about 6 to 8 months after I had my daughter. I didn't cry for the birth of her. I didn't cry at my wedding. I didn't cry at my engagement. My wife would tell people that I was a mutant or a robot because I had no emotions. And then over the course of having a little kid, especially, a little daughter, and then your heart just changes. And dude, I'd like start crying in movies that I've watched 10 times and never cried before. I'm crying watching dog rescue videos because we have a couple of rescue pits. I cry watching anything that involves kids in a negative way. But the first time I cried, it was in front of my wife. We were at counseling. We go to marital counseling a couple times a year just to keep our marriage moving forward in the right direction. Although this particular time, it was not a normal marital counseling night. We were there for a specific purpose. And I don't even remember what it is anymore. However, whatever it was for a negative reason. And I ended up in our pastor's, we're in our pastor's office. And I've known the guy who's our pastor, I knew him as a friend for a long time. I've known him for, I don't know, man, like close to 15 years. He's one of the first people I met in California. He was the very first pastor I became friends with at Rock Harbor in Costa Mesa. And man, so he's known me for a long time. He knows I'm not emotional. So we're in his office, and I don't know, it wasn't very long, and I just started crying then. So he didn't have a Kleenexes in there because he's never seen me cry. He's like, "Oh, I'll be right back." He quickly goes and grabs a Kleenex box and Kleenex, like, pass me on the back, and I'm pissed because I'm crying, but I can't stop it. I'm like, kind of like trying to move myself into my side of the room a little bit to get out of everybody's way, and we leave, afterwards. And so Tara's then at the point, she's like telling me about how she's never felt closer to me and stuff, and I was like, awesome, that's great. Your most vulnerable moment when you're super not excited about it, and of course that's when your significant other is super excited. She was so happy that she saw me cry. Oh. Oh man, the joy.
I hear it, and I agree. I never could have imagined the feeling that you get the first time you see your daughter. I can't even describe it. It's the cool, people will tell you it's the coolest feeling in the world, and be ready for it. But no matter how many people tell you, it does nothing equates to that feeling when you first see her and you first hold her. It's the coolest thing in the world. And to watch her every day grow up and do these new things it's awesome.
Well, I'm going to be excited to hopefully have that experience this time.
Yeah.
Because the first time, that was not my experience. Tara had to have a C-section because our daughter went into breech a few weeks before we were supposed to have her. And they take her, so they cut Tara open and pull out Scarlett. And right away, they start working, making sure everything's okay, and everything was not okay. And within the first 90 seconds to 2 minutes of her being into this world, they rushed her out with a team of doctors into the NICU. And it was such chaos.
Yeah.
I was basically told within the first 60 seconds of her even being out, I hadn't even really seen her yet. Like, hey, we got to take care of NICU. What do you want to do? Do you want to stay here? Do you want to come? And I'm like looking over at my wife, whose stomach is wide open.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, just so much chaos. And you know, like I'm a pretty calm person. I like to like take information in and then think about it for a minute.
Yeah.
This is not one of those moments you get to think about it. And so like I'm looking at Tara, you know, I'm seeing her face. They have this like curtain over so she can't see, you know, what's going on. But they're like, somebody's now trying to put her insides back in and they haven't started stapling her stomach together. She's looking at me. I'm looking at my daughter. I'm looking at the doctors. There's more people rushing the room. Things are going haywire. And then Tara's just like, go with our daughter. So like I follow the team. We get in the elevator, go up. Like they're now telling me a bunch of stuff. And I'm not even able to like, I couldn't even tell you what they told me. My brain wasn't like, I'm just like, dude, my wife's downstairs. Her stomach's still open. My daughter's here. They're now using a thing to try and get her breathing. Like it's just chaos. And then they're like whipping her into this room and whipping her into the next thing. And doctors are everywhere. And there's sounds and they start hooking up to all these tubes. And one of the nurses comes over. She's like, hey, take a picture right now with your phone of your daughter, because this is the last time that you're going to see her without a bunch of tubes and stuff in her. And it will probably freak your wife out when she sees her afterwards. Yeah. So I quickly grabbed my phone and just took a quick snapshot. And that was it. And then she's in the NICU. I wasn't even allowed in to the main area they had her in right away. I had to sit outside in a separate area. And then once they got her hooked up to everything and got her breathing, then they let me in. And I didn't get a hold of her, touch her, nothing. I had to, the only way I was even able to do anything was this, I put my hand in this little, so she's in this, you know, clear glass box with a pumping oxygen in, and there's all these tubes and sensors and everything. Mm-hmm. And there's only one little hand thing where it's like, you know, you put your hand in, there's a glove in the thing. And I gotta have one hand in there, and I gotta just kind of like, I don't get touch with my own skin, you know, I'm touching her with a glove. It was intense, bro. Like that whole experience was horrible. She lived, obviously, and you know, she's a freaking firecracker now, but you know, I had to go back and tell my wife. Yeah. Who's been on drugs and just was cut in half and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. It's crazy. And so, you know, I did show her the picture, and I was like, I don't even think I told her. I think I just like, oh, here's a picture of Scarlett so you can at least see her right away, you know? And then I was like, withholding information, which I don't like to do, but I was like, I can't tell her because she's going to freak out. She couldn't even see Scarlett for the first 6 to 8 hours. So I did eventually go back up. You know, I had to bounce up and down. So I went back up, and once they got everything under control, I actually was allowed to hold her, and I did skin to skin with her first. So she slept on. We actually took a nap together. She, because you know when you do a C-section, you're up at like 4 a.m. Get to the hospital. Everything's really early. So it was a really early morning. I didn't obviously sleep much the night before, and I was exhausted. So I have this recliner chair right next to her incubator, you know, because she couldn't go very far because she still had all the sensors and everything on her and breathing tube and whatnot. And I just kind of sat her on my chest and called her, and we took a nap for a half hour together. It was great. Yeah. So that part was special. But man, the pure chaos that we experienced was, I'm really hoping to have your experience. Now we do have to have a C-section, but I'm hoping that they take her and they give her to me. Yeah. It's vastly different.
More like what I experienced. Mine was a little more smooth, but yeah, I couldn't even imagine going through that. That's crazy. But yeah, I hope this one for you is a little bit smoother.
Yeah, me too. Well, you know, like looking back, you don't know what you don't know, right? So I don't know what it's like to have your experience, but you know, going back to like, you're so distraught anyways, and the sheer volume of information that you're taking on.
Oh yeah.
It's overwhelming.
Great.
So I don't even remember much. It's just like, it's one massive blur of moments of things. I just remember, like, I remember all the doctors all telling me stuff at the same time. And I'm like, who am I supposed to listen to?
Yeah.
And you're all telling me stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to have multiple conversations at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but man, I really appreciate having you on. Thank you so much. And I'm glad that you are getting to continue to progress in your NHL journey. And I'm sorry that it's been such a crazy couple of seasons with the whole COVID thing, and
I know.
not even knowing when the next season is going to start. And I like, same thing for all the sports, man. Like, with the exception of football, because they started relatively on time for the NHL anyways. They just didn't do a preseason, and it's been pretty smooth as far as, like, I can turn the TV and there's games on Sunday.
Yeah,
true. The Seahawks haven't been disrupted yet. They were 5-0 until Sunday. I gotta watch that loss. So, dude, every time I get like,
hey, I'm a Giants fan, okay? Don't talk to me about this.
You're my dad. I'm sorry, man. That's a tough boat to be in.
Careful, here we come.
Yeah, my father-in-law is a diehard Giants fan. But yeah, man, this was great. I appreciate you taking the time, and of course, getting to let us in a little bit on that journey and the things you've gone through. And
of course,
it's been fun. But best of luck to you this upcoming season. I know I'll stay in touch with you. And for all my guests on the show, or listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. You're on my podcast, Get It, with Stephen Basita. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.